Good afternoon, I'm Katie Wilson and you're watching Context. The deputy head of the Russian Navy has been killed near the Ukrainian border. The Russian military confirmed that Major General Mikhail Gudkov was killed during what Russia's defense ministry described as combat work in the western Kursk region, which borders Ukraine's Sumy region. The ministry gave no further details about the operation. Last summer, Ukraine launched a surprise offensive in Kursk. While most of its troops have mostly been driven out, Kyiv said last month that it was still holding on to small areas of the region. Gudkov's death is one of the most high-profile losses for Moscow since the start of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Following Gudkov's death, Russia has cancelled its annual naval parade in St. Petersburg, citing security concerns. That's according to Russian news outlet Fontanka. The naval parade was scheduled for the last Sunday of July to mark Navy Day, an event featuring ship displays which usually attracts thousands of spectators. Authorities are yet to officially confirm the cancellation or disclose the specific threats behind the decision. Joining us now to unpack all of this is Peter Zalmayev, Director of Eurasia Democracy Initiative, and political analyst Alexandra Filipenko. Thank you both for being with us. Now, Peter, I'd like to start with you. Before we get into this, let's discuss the latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. We woke up to the news of intense Russian drone strikes on Kyiv overnight, with Ukraine saying Russia had fired a record 550 drones and 11 missiles. What more do we know?
Listen, we're back to square one with the Russian tactics. Since the war began, it started immediately to sink in with the Russian leadership that an outright military victory against Ukraine is not in the cards. I mean, let me remind you, the Russian army went in Ukraine thinking that Ukraine would fall within 3 to 5 business days. In 3.5 years, we're still later, we're still here. We see that Donald Trump's peace initiatives have brought us nothing. If anything, more misery. Vladimir Putin is feeling confident that he can continue running circles around Donald Trump and other Western leaders. Emmanuel Macron has just spoke with Putin, and Trump had his 5th phone conversation with Putin, and that's how he's responding to them. Essentially, that's the signal he's sending. He is counting on waiting out the Western powers. He is counting on the success of his summer offensive, knocking out more Ukraine's territory before he's truly willing and able to sit down for peace talks. And he is also hoping that he can increase pressure on the Ukrainian political leadership by targeting civilians, making their lives impossible, where they would start protesting to their governments and demanding a quick end to this war. That is the strategy that Vladimir Putin is pursuing with these increased bombardments of Ukraine's cities and towns.
Now let's get into the cancellation of this naval parade. Alexandra, can we expect the Kremlin to officially speak out about this cancellation?
Well, this cancellation is very painful for the Kremlin. Actually, this Navy Day parade and concert on the Palace Square, in theory, were supposed to take place on July 27th, and now they cite security measures. So it was canceled for the first time in Russian history due to security measures. Which are the security measures? It's not fully understood, but most probably it's connected with what is actually going on. So, of course, the Kremlin, for all the time from the start of the full-scale invasion, and of course from the start of the war from 2014, was doing its best to pretend as if nothing is happening. There is no war. This is why, one of the reasons why it's just a special military operation somewhere very far away. Nothing is happening. Life as usual. Everything is great. Putin is great. That is what Kremlin was trying to project. That is what Kremlin was trying to tell all the citizens of Russia, to make them sure that everything is going fine. But now we are seeing different cancellations. We're seeing different measures being taken by the Russian government because, yes, they are starting to realize that most probably they cannot secure the perimeter to the needed level, let's say. Those security measures are not enough. So they must speak out because this is a big deal. Of course, this is the main naval parade that's been held annually since 2017 on Navy Day, and it's always been celebrated on the last Sunday of July. And for Putin, it's always been a big day to speak out and to show himself. But now it is not happening, so we must expect some kind of explanation from the Kremlin. As of now, just those security measures.
Now, Peter, what do you make of this security concerns line from the Kremlin, and how significant of a loss do you think Gudkov is to the Russian Navy?
I mean, it's hugely significant. The New York Times actually commenting on the situation had a nice recap of Mr. Gudkov's accomplishments and the fact that in the last year he was not only commended as a exemplary military leader by Vladimir Putin himself, but was given Russia's highest award, the Golden Star of Russia, in 2023. This is another slap in the face of Vladimir Putin, and it's a demonstration that both can play this game of asymmetrical warfare. If Russia is targeting our civilian areas and violating all norms, if there are any more of warfare, then Ukraine is showing an ability to strike at the heart of Russia's military leadership. Already some are comparing it with Israel's campaign in Iran, the surgical strikes taking out the military high command, which is also, let me remark that the other side has not been able to achieve that sort of thing, which means that Russia's intelligence is not up to standards of Ukraine's intelligence. We have seen only a fraction of the same on the part of Russians against Ukrainians, and it's all, the majority of these surgical strikes have been going one way. This is also coming on the heels of a liquidation, as the word is, or neutralization, the killing of the former mayor of the occupied Luhansk, the city of Luhansk, and another bigwig in the occupation authority hierarchy. And this is also to show a signal that, you will not be able to be a traitor to your own country. Mind you, Luhansk is officially still territory of Ukraine. This will send, shivers down the backs of those who are willing to, assume those positions of power in the occupied territories.
Now, Alexandra, Kyiv hasn't actually officially acknowledged involvement in this attack, but of course that is Ukraine's usual policy. Is there any likelihood that Kyiv will comment on this or acknowledge involvement in Gudkov's death?
Well, I do not expect this to happen because, of course, this is the asymmetrical warfare. And I must say that Gudkov is the 12th Russian general killed during the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. His death has been confirmed by Russian authorities. Actually, a total of 16 generals have been reported killed from the start of the full-scale invasion. And his brigades were known for fighting near Kiev and in Mariupol. And so this is a notorious, let's say, personality. So I would not expect to hear anything from the Ukrainian side. And of course, this is exactly the way, let's say, Ukraine acts mirroring Russian ways, because Russia would never acknowledge doing anything. And so these are the people who committed atrocities. These are people who committed war crimes in Ukraine. They are known for killing civilians in Bucha, in Irpin, in Gostomel, and in the Kiev region in Ukraine. So this personality, let's say, this military personality, of course, was a target, obviously. And we understand that this is, as they say, a legitimate target. let's say. And he was killed along with a few other senior officials, also not generals, but still senior officials. But most probably, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that this will be somehow commented on Kiev's part. I think for Kiev it is enough that this person is no longer a threat to Ukraine, so there is no need for any additional, let's say, words on that part.
And Peter, could you talk me through more what we know so far about the circumstances of Gudkov's death? So we've been hearing reports of a Ukrainian missile strike. What more do we know about what happened?
Well, the circumstances are obviously, considering that there's no comment on the Ukrainian side, we don't know anything other than this was, this also involved at least several others, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 others that are also pretty high-ranking officers. So taken together, a huge bonus for Ukraine. I agree with our colleague that Ukraine does not need any accolades for this. It does not need to claim credit for it. And let's face it, we are also operating in a different reality with the new administration in the White House actually pressing Ukraine's feet to the fire. It seems like much more than it does to Vladimir Putin. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Vladimir Putin in yesterday's talks with Donald Trump complained to him that, look, you know, you have an unruly ally. You have to restrain Ukraine. You have to tell it to stop killing our generals or else. I mean, this has already happened before. And so Ukraine has to really, it's a very fine balancing act for Ukraine to continue acting asymmetrically because it cannot afford not to. Ukraine has the preponderance of military, financial means at its disposal. Ukraine has to act surgically and asymmetrically, and at the same time not antagonize its European and American allies.
And Peter, what's your assessment of the morale in Kyiv at the moment?
I mean, the morale is that I don't think folks are any closer to capitulation. They're fully cognizant that whatever is being offered by the Russian side is nothing short of a surrender. The terms of the haven't changed, and at the same time, people are, of course, fatigued. You're talking about, you know, air raids lasting up to 10 hours per night. People are severely sleep deprived. You have to understand that this is a huge strain, especially on the residents of the capital of Kiev. And once again, you know, maybe it's time for Donald Trump to, you know, disengage from the peace talks because the equation has been clear. The minute Donald Trump has engaged in peace talks with the Russian side, the bombardments against Ukraine have increased in intensity and in frequency. Vladimir Putin, I don't think he will be dissuaded by these nice phone conversations. Maybe there's something else that needs to be brought to bear, and that is not cutting off Ukraine's aid, as it was announced by the Pentagon the other day, and it's through increasing sanctions than instead of letting them lapse, as we have seen in the recent months.
And Alexandra, what about the mood in Moscow, especially as Peter mentioned, following not only the phone call with Trump, but also this increase in strikes on Ukraine?
Well, of course, it depends on how you look at it, because in circles surrounding Putin, surrounding the Kremlin, they think and they suppose that the massive strike immediately after the conversation with Trump is a show of force. And of course, there was no urgent need for that massive strike militarily. So they are sending a signal, and they believe, the people surrounding Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Putin himself believe that this is a show of force. And of course, this is a signal to Trump, but also this tells me that there is something wrong, fundamentally wrong, also with the people that are close to Vladimir Putin. he wanted to demonstrate to the establishment that he doesn't care about the American president. He wanted to demonstrate it also to the ones near him. So, of course, this is another tragedy brought by the Kremlin and another game that is being played by Vladimir Putin to, first of all, please those around him and show that he's not willing to stop, and demonstratively send the signal to the United States. And if we're talking about Russian people who do not follow that closely what is going on, for now, for Vladimir Putin, he still can, and the Kremlin, they still can say that this is a special military operation somewhere far, far away. That is why such things as the cancellation of the Navy parade, such things as the missile strikes and killings of generals who committed atrocities in Ukraine, this is what bringing the Russians to the realization of what is going on. This can help bring them to that realization. But for now, things are business as usual. Things are going normally. Things are going okay. So this is a demonstrative strike, ignoring the peacekeeping efforts of President Trump.
Now let's get into that phone call a bit more and these efforts by Trump. Now, Peter, Trump was able to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Is there any hope or indication that he can do the same between Russia and Ukraine?
Apparently not. And in fact, Donald Trump sort of latched on, in my honest opinion, to this idea to get involved against Iran on the side of Israel as partly a way to distract, from his obvious failures on the Ukrainian-Russian front. He announced an unequivocal victory in this 12-day war he's announced, and he's now expecting he will be rewarded with a Nobel Prize for Peace, etc. And it's very clear that his efforts in Russia, Ukraine have been a failure. He had question about why he hasn't been able to solve this war in 24 hours, contrary to his campaign promise. And he says, well, no one knew how hard it would be. Obviously, everyone knew, except apparently Donald Trump.
Now, Alexandra, how concerned should Zelensky be about one of the decisions from Washington, and that's to halt some shipments of weapons to Ukraine?
For now, within the U.S. administration, there are two groups, let's say, one headed by State Secretary and now also advisor, National Security Advisor to President Trump, Marco Rubio, who is more, let's say, hawkish on Russia and generally sees the idea of really putting an end to the war in Ukraine as a priority. And the other is coming from the Pentagon. The other is the Pentagon group, let's say, headed by Pete Hegseth. So we are seeing right now that according to Pentagon's rules right now, they have halted some weapons in order to figure out how much of weaponry do the United States have left. Is everything okay with the stockpiles of American weapons for Americans? America first. So the Minister of Defense is now heading this other group of within the Trump administration who believes that no, there is no need to help Ukraine that much because America first, and first of all, they need to know how much weaponry is left in the American stockpile. So this pause, and we understand that we're talking about a war here. We're talking about people being killed every day and Russian rockets flying to Ukraine every day. So every day is extremely important. Every day of no Patriot missiles coming to Ukraine is extremely important. So this is why, of course, for Pete Hegseth, this is not much of a deal. Of course, this can wait until after the Independence Day holidays. Or on the other hand, for Ukraine and for Europe, for the international community, it's actually of crucial importance for the weapons to be sent to Ukraine. Right now, after the call with President Zelensky, Donald Trump can restore the sending of weapons to Ukraine. Donald Trump has already said that it's not a hold. They just need to figure out how many weapons do they have left. Is there enough for Americans themselves? So it's not a cancellation. So President Trump can do that, or Congress can restore it because they were allocated by Congress, and Congress can do it, but Congress can do it only after the Independence Day weekend and the holidays of the Independence Days. They're prolonged until the mid of next week. So this can happen in the mid next week. So Congress can act actually. And as we've heard from Tammy Bruce, from Speaker of State Department, who was bedazzled by what's happened with the weapons. She could not reply to journalists and say why did that happen. She said that it's not a halt, it's just a pause, a small tiny pause, and everything will come back to normal. So it can come back to normal with President Trump's help. He can do that after a call with President Zelensky, or of course with Congress's help, but not earlier than the mid of next week.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you both, Alexandra and Peter, for joining us on the programme. Now, that brings this edition of Context to a close. We'll keep bringing you all of the latest developments on the Russia-Ukraine war here on A News. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.